to the channel, and today we have precision farming has literally just dropped. I've just got my hands on it this morning and been through and pulled a load of data out because it's what I like and it's probably why you're here. So first video, we're going to actually before that going to be doing a load of videos on precision farming. Going to try and keep them fairly short so they're easy to watch and cover a whole load of different topics. The first one is on optimal levels for pH, nitrogen and seeding, and we're going to go into that in a minute. First, if you're new to the channel, then hit the like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for loads of videos on precision farming and all sorts of other stuff as well. So let's dive into the details, shall we? Because that's why I'm here and hopefully why you're here. So we're going to have a look at pH or lime application level, and that is based on the soil type, the yield bonus that you're going to get, which is also affected by the soil type, nitrogen level that is required for a crop, and that is based on the crop that's in the ground and the soil type, and the seeding rate. Some crops have variable seed rate, not all crops, and again that is affected by the crop and the soil type. So let's have a look at some of the numbers, shall we? So first off, optimal pH or lime application. As I said, based on soil type, and for each of the 4 different soil types. So we have limey sand, you want a pH of 6, sandy loam, you want a pH of 6.5, loam, you want a pH of 6.75, and silty clay, you want a pH of 7. And each time you harvest a field, the pH will be reduced by about 1.9. Let's round that up a little bit. If your pH is way too low, you're going to take a massive hit on yield. And if it's way too high, you're going to take a massive hit on yield. Around the middle, it's not too bad. And I'm going to do a separate video on the effect of pH on yield in the next few days. Moving on to the effect of soil type. So each soil type has an effect on yield. This is currently the same for all crops that are in the game. It can be set based on per crop, per soil type. But as Giants have it, it's just done per soil type for each crop. It's the same value. So if you're on loamy sand, you're going to get a 20% reduction in yield. If you're on sandy loam, you'll get the yield you would expect normally with base game. If you're on loam, you're going to get a 25% boost in yield, which is really cool. If you're on silty clay, you're going to get a 10% hit. And most soil maps are kind of mixed between all of them. So it averages out in the end most of the time, I think, unless you can hit a field that's got a lot of loam in it, and then you're on to a good one. So now I'm going to go through for each of the crops that are in the game, the nitrogen that you need, so how much fertilizer you need to apply, and for those that have variable rate seeding, how much seed you're going to need. And there are some other features with different crops that we'll pick up as we go through. So for wheat, you need quite a lot of nitrogen, between 140 and 200 units, and it takes a lot back out of the ground. So I've also got how much harvesting takes out, and wheat takes most of the nitrogen you put in back out of the ground. And it does have variable rate seeding that you can see there. And I think these numbers are pretty much the same as they were in FS19. I haven't gone back and checked, but they look familiar to me. Moving on to barley, it needs a little bit less nitrogen and leaves a little bit in the ground. Also has variable rate seeding, and I'm not going to read all the numbers out. They'll be on the screen, and if you want this set of slides, they'll be on my Discord as well as PDF after the video has released. Oats, much lower nitrogen use, really good crop if you're starting out and you don't want you spending loads on fertilizer. Highest is 100 units, and it does leave a little bit behind when you harvest it. So variable rate seeding again. Canola, another one that uses a lot of nitrogen, pretty much the same values as wheat, I think, and it takes most of the nitrogen back out with it as well when you harvest it, but uses a lot less seed. So yeah, maybe one to consider as well. Sorghum, another low-ish nitrogen one, and again it does leave a little bit of nitrogen behind when you harvest it. Grapes and olives, neither of these require nitrogen and don't remove it. So to me, I haven't tested it yet, that says you don't need to fertilize grapes and olives anymore. You just need to do probably your mulching and subsoiling, and we'll test that at some point. Yeah, neither of those require any nitrogen as it stands in the game. Sunflowers, again, a fairly low nitrogen requiring crop, and they leave a little bit of nitrogen behind with them, and they do have their variable rate seeding. Corn or maize, again, back up in the high numbers, up to the 200 units of nitrogen, and mostly high or standard rate seeding. And corn is another one that just leaves a little bit of nitrogen behind afterwards. Soybeans, first of the interesting crops, doesn't require any nitrogen. Harvesting it doesn't take any nitrogen out of the soil. It doesn't boost nitrogen either, like some people do say on YouTube quite often. Soybeans is the first of the crops that ignores over fertilization. So if you've got a field that you're putting soybeans in, and from whatever crop you've had in there before, it's got a lot of nitrogen in it, it will ignore it. It won't affect the yield. So that's cool. You can always fertilize soybeans. So if you want to chuck, if you've got some manure you want to get rid of, you could throw that over it. And this is the first crop as well where, because it doesn't require nitrogen, you can't select it as a default rate for application with a fertilizer spreader. Potatoes, fair, moderate nitrogen usage. And again, potatoes ignore over fertilization, which is quite cool. So you could just go with lots of organic fertilizer on your potatoes. You could put a lot of manure or slurry down or digestate if you've got it, coat the field, and then plant your potatoes, and it will ignore if you put too much on. That's kind of cool. Same with sugar beet. Sugar beet does add in the variable rate seeding compared to potatoes, and does require a little bit more nitrogen than potatoes, but again, it ignores the over fertilization. Cotton, no variable rate seeding and fairly low nitrogen usage there. Sugarcane, this is common with the crops that can regrow. You can always fertilize sugarcane, and fixed rate seeding, I should have deleted that column, and fairly high nitrogen usage there. Poplar, another one that ignores over fertilization and can always be fertilized. It does require quite a lot and takes most of that out when you harvest it. Fixed seeding rate as well for poplar. Makes sense, you're planting little trees. Grass and meadow, I've put these together because they have the same nitrogen requirements. I'm not sure actually if you can even fertilize a meadow because it's not a planted field. But anyway, grass ignores over fertilization and can always be fertilized. So again, that's a good one for getting your organic fertilizer on, because you can just lob it on. It doesn't need a lot of nitrogen. So you're up at 200 nitrogen in the loam and the silty clay, and it takes most of that back out when you mow it. And that's it for the first video, looking at pH, nitrogen and seeding rates. Lots more to come. If you've got questions about things, chuck them in the comments. If you liked the video, hit the like button. If you didn't like the video, hit the dislike button, because that helps just as much. And if you're new to the channel, click subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you next time on FS22.